and welcome back to the Shades of Magic Readalong. We are in week 9 of 10. Oh boy, can you even see how many? It's just all post. I had to go back to the store for more post-it notes. That's what it came down to here. And I still don't think I have enough to finish this book. Wow, I just feel like we all need to take a centering breath before we begin because we left everyone in pretty dire straits. And I gotta say, this week and next week are probably gonna feel just about that way, okay? So when we left off, the king in Red London definitely planning something, desperate. We are waiting on a spell to put the whole city to sleep. Oseron has built himself a palace next to the real palace, and yet he's still not happy with the amount of magic that he has. Lila, Kell, Alucard, and Holland have boarded a ship with their crew and Jasta, another captain, to go off and find an inheritor at the floating market. Everyone is busy. Also, the idea of all those people on a ship together, I mean, I love it. They hate it. It's just right for drama. Let's find out what happens next. So we actually open part 8, Uncharted Waters. We're gonna open with Alucard Emery. He is having really terrible coffee. The coffee just gets worse over the course of his quest. But having really bad cup of coffee and watching Lila Bard, and we actually learn that because he can see the threads of power, oh, look at that little, it's like I wove that in for the next series. But because he can see the threads of magic, he has actually known that Lila was an Antari magician since the moment she came onto his ship. It's actually why he let her onto his ship in the first place, because he could see the very particular silver threads on the air around her. He's thinking about the fact that he's always known this when Kell joins him. Remember, Kell and Alucard, oil and water, cats and dogs in a bag. We just don't want them together. And Kell's basically like, you've known this whole time, haven't you? I can see the way you're looking at her, and I know you got that little special eye magic, and like, you knew. And Alucard's like, yeah, I knew. But she didn't tell you, and I didn't have to be told. So what does that say about you? Again, Alucard's just trying to get punched every day of his life. Alucard does take this opportunity, though, to tell Kell what really happened when he left Rye. And essentially, we learned that Alucard did not plan on leaving Rye, that Alucard was jumped. He went home after a night with Rye, and his family, his father, and his older brother essentially jumped him, beat the absolute shit out of him, and shipped him away. It's quite a violent scene. It's also a scene that is explored in more detail in a short story called A Royal Affair. But essentially, Alucard tells the true story of why he left Rye, and that when he finally managed to come back to the city, he didn't realize that Rye cared as much about him as he cared about Rye, or else he never would have left again. And Kell basically is like, I really wish you'd keep this story to yourself because I just really enjoy hating you, and I still hate you, even though you told me your sob story. And Alucard's like, yeah, that's fine. It's completely mutual. Don't worry. But we're starting to get a glimpse that Alucard, has a really good heart under there, and he was also very young and didn't handle things well. Kell leaves to go to a different part of the ship that does not have Alucard Emery on it, and Lila comes over and they have a little talk about running away, and Alucard admits that he likes the sea, but he's kind of really tired of running away, and that maybe we get a sense that he only ever became a seafaring person because of what happened with Rye and his family, and he would really like to go home now. Meanwhile, they pass through the wreckage of another ship, and we learn about the sea serpents. And the sea serpents are not like those big-ass eels in The Princess Bride. The sea serpents is a name for some pirates that like to burn the boats from the people that they murder. So Lila's like, oh man, poor boat. And Alucard's like, you're truly the only person I know that would be sad about the boat. She's like, well, I know whatever the people did, they probably deserved it, but the boat did not deserve it. And Alucard is like, you are so weird. Meanwhile, Kell goes down to check on Holland, who is chained in the hold. And for once, he finds Holland asleep. And we never see Holland asleep because Holland never lets his guard down. And Kell goes to wake him. And there's a moment when Kell wakes Holland where we see the unbridled fear that has been trained into Holland over his years with the Dane twins when that armor is down. It very quickly comes back up, but we have seen it. And Kell unchains Holland because he doesn't really see the point of having him chained. He's an Antari magician. It's really just pointless. And he tells Holland their plan because Holland's like, I can piece it together from everything I'm hearing people say around the ship, or you could just save me the time and energy and tell me what we're doing. And so Kell tells him the plan, And Kell asks about the 3 people that Holland killed before he became a servant to the Danes, and Holland's basically like, fuck off. But we're gonna find out because Holland is letting us into his mind. And so we knew that he killed his brother, who tried to kill him. We know that he killed his lover, who tried to kill him. And now we're gonna see the 3rd one. So we have a flashback with Holland and Vortalis. Remember, Vortalis is the guy who comes to him and is like, I don't actually want to kill you, I want you to help me kill the shithead king. And we know that the kings and queens in White London historically are tyrants. They're all terrible people because that's the kind of person that gets to take the throne. And Vortalis has a vision for what if we broke that cycle? Like, what if you and I worked together and your magic and my vision for the future, we could actually make change happen. And so he essentially convinces Holland to help him kill the king. And essentially he needs Holland's magic to do it because the king's name is Gorst. And Gorst, I picked a name. I don't know. If your name is Gorst and you're watching, I'm sorry. It's not inherently a bad name, but I just picked a name for like what I kind of felt would be like the shithead king in White London. And so Gorst essentially is super paranoid and doesn't let anyone get close to him and holds up in the castle fortress, but Holland can make doors. And so using Holland's magic, they kill Gorst and Holland crowns Vortalis king. And Vortalis is like, now we're actually going to make change happen. It's not gonna last very long. Okay, so we cut back to the present day and the ship and Leno's standing at the stern, and we hear that Josta says they need to dock. And they're like, I think we're in a hurry. And she's like, no, we have to dock for like an hour at this port, don't worry. We kind of took off without any supplies. I need some supplies. Josta's starting to be a tiny bit sketchy, so we should all just put up like a miniature red flag in our brain. But anyway, she's like, we're gonna dock, don't worry, no one's gonna notice. The place is called Rosenal. Problem is, they get to this port and we actually learn that it's a private port, and Rosenal and his like kind of merry band is not supposed to be present at the time, but they are. And Joss is like, oh shit, you need to get the Antari magicians off this ship because we are not in the capital anymore. And like, they will definitely either kill those Antari or try and sell them on the black market. Like, you just can't be like walking around like princes in this part of the world. So she's like, get off the ship and come back in an hour. How much trouble can we get up to in an hour in a private port? I'm sure nothing will go wrong. Anyway, we have a near escape, but the 3 Antari manage to get off the ship. Lila does not like Rosenal at this place. She has kind of a bad feeling. She can't shake the vibe that she's being watched. And Alucard's like, yeah, I've been here before. Alucard's with them. And Alucard's like, I've been here before, and that's just kind of the vibe of this place. And Lila's like, I don't like it. Like, I just keep feeling like I'm being watched. It's a bad feeling. So they go into a tavern, and they're killing time, and they discuss the floating market, and we learn that there are some rules. First of all, in order to even board the floating market and like investigate what it has, so it mostly specializes in forbidden objects and forbidden magic, but in order to even go and have a look around, you have to make a token offering to Maris, the captain, and it has to be valuable in some way. And Lila's like, yeah, you really could have said this shit before we left London, like, I only have what I have in my pockets now. And Alucard's like, seems like you problem, I'm gonna go find something. You stay here. Alucard leaves. Lila's like, I'm obviously gonna follow Alucard. We have this kind of, this deal where we just look out for each other. So even though he said, don't follow me, she's like, I'm gonna follow. Kell's like, don't follow him. And she's like, I'm gonna do what I want. So Lila follows Alucard and promptly loses him. And now Lila is alone again in Rosenal, and she still cannot shake that bad vibe. Like, people are definitely following her. And she's absolutely right. It turns out people are following her. She gets jumped by Trouble, and we're gonna do a way throwback for this Trouble, because she gets jumped. Let's take a moment. At the very beginning of Gathering of Shadows, we open book 2 with Lila floating in a little skiff in a dress tied up in the middle of the sea. And she cons her way onto a pirate ship. And then she like knocks out most of that crew, steals their shit, and goes, and it's part of a bet, right? This is that crew. So that crew from book 2 have tracked Lila down and have jumped her. And Lila's like, okay, that's fine. I can hold my own against that. I'm a motherfucking Antari magician now. Don't worry. Okay, we'll come back to her in a second. Meanwhile, Kell and Holland are sitting alone in the tavern together, and it's really super awkward because it's Kell and Holland. Like, they don't get along either. Really, a rule for the series, no one gets along with Kell. I don't know what that says about Kell, but Kell has very few friends and a lot of people that seem to want to punch him all the time. So Holland tells Kell that he wants to be the one to use the inheritor on Oseron. And this is important because whichever one of them uses the inheritor is going to lose their magic. Because the way that the inheritor works is you don't get to like pick which part of yourself you put into this device to be transported. Like, it's all of your power. And Lila's not going to do it, we know that. Kell cannot do it because of Rye. And so Holland is making out like it's his choice and he's demanding it, but we also kind of get that he's doing this as a mercy for Kell. And Kell says, thank you, and Holland's like, fuck you, I'm not doing this for you. But he's got his own reasons. And with that, we cut back to, I got sad for a second, but then I realized we weren't at that scene yet, so we're okay. So with that, we cut back to a flashback of Vortalis being named the Winter King, styling himself this way. And Holland seems happy. Like, Holland and Vortalis are setting up this kingdom. They're like hopeful. And Kell arrives, child Kell, like 11, 12-year-old Kell, his first job as messenger. And he arrives in White London to bring a message to Vortalis, the current ruler on the throne. And Holland takes an instant dislike to Child Kell. Because Child Kell's like, oh, we're like the same. Like, you and me, we both have the black eye, the mark of magic. Like, we're in Tari, we're the same. And Holland's like, fuck off. Like, basically like, shoo. Does not like Kell, sees that he's like spoiled and basically has a lot of resentment towards this child. He's like 20 at the time and Kell's like 10. Anyway, we come back to Lila Bard, who is fighting against a solid 6 men, all right, from this pirate ship that she robbed. And she's holding her own until the moment she's not. And it tips. Because, you know, there's just only so many people you can fight at one time, especially if you're not at your absolute best. And we see she is in trouble. And we cut from there for a moment to Kell and Holland discussing, like, what their offerings are going to be for the market. And Alucard returns. And they're like, hey, where's Lila? And he's like, how should I know? And they're like, she left with you. And he's like, I don't see Lila, do you? And all 3 of them are like, fuck. And so the 3 of them are like, we gotta find Lila right now. And it's a really good thing they take off because Lila is now losing. Lila is losing, but she's like, I counted 6. She manages to put 6 of them down and she miscounted and there's a 7 and he drives a knife up through her ribcage and into her heart. And we're like, like, what the fuck? It's Lila Bard! And like, she's had a lot of like grazing wounds, but this is like a full-on like to the hilt. And like, she goes down and she starts to black out and the last thing she hears is someone telling her to hold on. And that voice does not belong to Kell, it belongs to Holland. Because they have split up to try and find Lila and Holland has gotten to Lila first and Holland does a healing spell on Lila and then Kell gets there and then Kell and Holland fight together for the very first time in this whole series against the rest of the crew of this pirate ship that show up and they dispatch all of them and Lila's on the ground and Alucard arrives and he's like, what the fuck, Lila? And then Lila is coming slowly back to life because Holland used a healing spell. And then Holland is like very exhausted and leans against a wall. And Kell is telling Lila, like, stay with me, stay with me. And this is triggering to Holland and he's gonna have a very bad memory, but we're not there yet. Because we gotta go to part 9, all right? We're just gonna take a moment before we get back to all of that drama. And we're going to be with Tyrion, the head priest, back in Red London. And he's thinking about the fact that he served Maxim's father, and now he serves Maxim. And he feels very conflicted about everything that's happening and about what Maxim is choosing to do. We still don't know what that is, but he's supposed to serve the royal family. And Amira, the queen, comes and she wants to know what Maxim's doing. And Tyrion can only tell her that the king is doing what he believes is right. And Amira is so terrified of loss. Like, this is the thing that scares her so much. And then Tyrion says, probably one of my favorite lines from the entire series. He says, love and loss are like a ship and the sea. They rise together. The more we love, the more we have to lose. But the only way to avoid loss is to avoid love, and what a sad world that would be. And with that, back to Lila Bard. Lila opens her eyes. She's alive. There are 10 bodies on the ground around her now. She's like, fuck, that sucked, but we're all alive. That will haunt me in my nightmares probably, but like, we're not gonna deal with it. The theme in the series, take the trauma, just put it inside, okay? So they head back to the ship, and Lila has a small non-verbal beat with Holland. It's all thinking. She's like looking at Holland, and she's thinking like, I still don't trust you. And Holland's like looking back at her like, you don't even know me. Okay, and that's how we're gonna come to, I think, one of the hardest chapters in the book. This is Flashback. This is Holland and Vortalis, the king. And they're talking about, Vortalis is talking about how he kind of likes Kell. He seems like a good kid, right? It's gonna be great. They're talking and they're having a nice evening at the castle, planning for the future. And Vortalis is smoking and he starts to cough. And Holland's like, this is weird because you smoke a lot, and he's coughing. And he starts to cough up blood. And Holland realizes too late that some kind of cursed magic is happening. And he starts to try and draw this poison out of his friend's body. And it's like shards of metal. And essentially, Vortalis dies. It is like a curse. And right then is when the Dane twins come in. And Holland is trapped. He stumbles across essentially a binding spell as he's trying to get to Vortalis. He can't escape. Holland is taken by the Dane twins. Athos Dane binds him and tortures him and essentially carves that soul seal into his body. And the thing that we learned about that soul seal that was on Holland that forced him to do the Dane twins' bidding is that it did not force his mind. It only forced his body. And so he was constantly being essentially torn apart from the inside because he became a spectator in his own actions. And essentially they beat this into him by making him kill Vortalis' allies. So they put a person who was on Vortalis' side in front of him, and they say, kill him, and Holland resists. But in the end, he kills him, and they make him do this again and again and again until he stops resisting, until the fight goes out of him. So, super grim, and also why Holland is the way he is, and the way that I want to sum it up. One by one, Athos and Astrid paraded the remains of Vortalis' life before Holland, instructing him again and again to cut their throats. Every time he tried to fight the order, every time he failed, every time he had to look them in their eyes and see the hatred, the betrayal, the anguished confusion before he cut them down. The bodies piled, Athos watched, Astrid grinned, Holland's hand moved on its puppet string, and his mind screamed until it finally lost its voice. Holland. The person who's videoing this right now, I want you to know, Jenna, had only read the first book before we started this read-along, so I've basically been telling it to her as I tell it to you. And at the beginning, she was like, I don't, like, what's the big deal with Holland? He's just the bad guy. And I'm, like, watching the emotion on her face behind the camera now, and I'm like, hey. So, anyway, we come back to Lila Bard. Lila can't sleep. Lila goes and confronts Holland. They need to have this reckoning. You know, he just saved her life. She's really pissed about that. Obviously not pissed to be alive, but it had to be Holland. And they have a confrontation over the number of people that they've killed. And she wants to, like, obviously hold him accountable for a huge amount of blood on his hands. And he points out that she does not know how many people she's killed. That he keeps a perfect record. And all of those things live with him like scars. And Lila cannot recount how many people she's killed. So there's a little bit of a reckoning moment. At this point, Lila goes to Kell. She's in her feelings, right? She has nearly died. She is pissed off. She feels helpless. She lets someone get the better of her in a fight. We have a lot of feelings. And she goes into Kell, and Kell starts to talk, and she basically cuts him off with a kiss. She doesn't want to think. She wants to feel. And what happens after that is one of my favorite scenes that I can't read to you because it gets some sexy times. But basically, what starts as a distraction becomes a lot more and becomes a sex scene that is essentially with Kell teaching Lila all of the different blood spells in a very sexy way. So, highly recommend that you read chapter 4 of which part? Highly recommend that you read part 9, chapter 4 yourself. Because I had a lot of fun writing it. Okay, With that, we cut back to Alucard, who spits out the latest batch of coffee, which is even worse than it was the last time, and they arrive at the floating market. Now, the plan is that Alucard, Lila, Kell, and Josta, the captain, are going to go onto the floating market together, but when they get to the edge of the market, like the doorway, Josta is refused. She's told, not today. And like basically that's Maris's prerogative. Maris runs the market along with her two nephews, and one of those nephews is like, Maris said no. We don't know what happened between Maris and Josta, but Josta's not getting on that boat today. So Josta stomps back to her own boat, pretty pissed off, and meanwhile, Alucard, Kell, and Lila go onto the floating market. Now Holland is also on that boat. He is in chains still, but he has been given leave to like wander the boat because what good is it to keep him in the hold? But what you need to know is that Alucard, Kell, and Lila are going into that market. So they're invited in. Kell and Co, that's how I refer to them in this note, Kell and Co. So they go, they meet Maris. Maris is this incredible captain. She's going to be very important for a very long time, so I'm just gonna like put a mental pin for you in this. They meet Maris, and they each give up something, a token. Kell gives up his shilling from Grey London that he has always used. Alucard gives up some Dreamsquick, which is like a sleeping agent that it turns out is like a running joke between him and Maris. And Lila gives up her pocket watch. This is the one that that she tried to give to Baron in the very first book. I didn't talk about it in extreme detail, but it's the one that Holland brought and threw at Lila's feet when they were hiding to try and show as proof that he had killed Baron. It's important to her. It's a memory for her of everything she had in Grey London, and she gives it up as a price for entering the market. Kell wants to like get to the point with Maris and be like, we're here for that inheritor, which Maris is wearing around her neck. And Alucard's like, that is not what we're gonna do. Like, you must just be terrible at bartering. We're gonna go, we're gonna like peruse this floating market and see if anything speaks to us and pretend that we're interested in other things. We're not gonna like just go straight to the thing that we actually want. We're going shopping. So go, split up, and find something that you might want to buy in this market. That's how we end. So we cut back to Holland, who has been left on the other boat by himself, and has a moment with Josta, who essentially is trying to decide if she wants to kill him. She basically holds Holland accountable for everything that's happening back in Red London, for everything that's happened to her family and her crew, and she's wondering if maybe 2 Antari would be enough to save the day. Again, we're like getting tiny red flags on Josta just through like the actions. And she hears people coming down the stairs, and she basically is like, I won't risk it. And she walks away, but we're like, oh, Josta, you have some judgments that I'm a little concerned about. And that brings us to part 10, blood and binding. Oh my goodness. Okay, we gotta take a tiny detour to Grey London. Remember last time we saw Ned in Grey London, he was like, something weird is going on and it feels a little bit like some bad magic might be creeping through this wall in this world. Well, it's worse. Ned Tuttle wakes in the middle of the night to somebody knocking on the door. Remember, he lives in the tavern now, so he goes downstairs into the tavern proper, goes to the front door. It is the door itself seems to be knocking. It's creepy as fuck. There is no one outside, but he hears somebody asking to be let in. This is bad magic. This is Oseron magic. It is bad magic. It is trying to get in. It is trying to talk to Ned. And Ned, bless him, he has surrounded himself by kind of occultist trappings at this point, even though he believes in like Kell's magic. He just starts essentially, you know that moment in The Mummy when like the mummy shows up and one of the guys has like 7 different like religious pendants around his neck and he's just trying to find the one that like speaks to the mummy. That's what Ned's doing. Ned's like, be gone, foul spirit, like, you shall not pass, like, you can't enter, like, Ned's just like, I'm not letting you in. Ned is a good guy. Ned does not bow down to this magic. Ned is like, I gotta find some stronger spells to ward my house. And then somebody else knocks and somebody just wanting to like come into the tavern. He's like, we're closed. Like, this place has been shut down until I get the bad spirits out. So Ned is holding the line over in Grey London. We do not need to worry about Grey London. We come back to Alucard perusing the market. So Alucard has gone off on his own. He's marveling at the market. We're learning a little bit about how it works and how you can't steal shit. It's like super warded. Don't even think about stealing things. It's also a very weird collection. Super weird collection of stuff. Not all of it is forbidden. A lot of it's rare. What we're gonna discover, but I don't know when, so I'm just gonna tell you now, is that essentially this market is not really for selling things. Maris has a deal with the crown. And essentially, forbidden objects come here as kind of a vault. This is really a place where forbidden objects are taken off the market. This is a protective space. Like, this is half the reason that Maris does what she does, is actually working with the Maresh crown, and every crown really, to just like make sure that the worst magic in the world is not readily accessible. But we don't know that. So Alucard is looking at everything, and he sees something special. First thing, he sees two things. Oh my goodness. Okay. The first thing he sees is a mirror. And he's trying to think of what he's going to do to prove the truth of his feelings for Rai. Because remember, Rai was like, come back after all of this and I'll listen to what you have to say. And it's like, how am I going to get him to believe it? And he sees this mirror that shows the truth. You cannot lie through this mirror. It reveals what your truths are. And he's like, I'm going to get this mirror for Rai. And then as he's heading back to meet up with the others, something catches his eye. And remember, Alucard's eyes can see magic, and they can see magic in its specific colors. So different elemental magics look different colors, and Tari magic looks silver. So when he looks at Kell or Lila or Holland, he sees them in like a cloud of silver thread. And he sees a ring on a table, and it's surrounded by silver threads. And he's like, huh, I'm gonna take that for Kell, because this seems like it's of Antari magic, who knows? So he grabs that and he goes to find Kell. We cut to Kell, and Kell is at this market, and he's like, I don't even know what everything here does. Like, I have like spent my life learning about magic. I have no idea what 90% of this shit is. And Alucard catches up with him and gives him the ring, and Kell makes a witty jab about it being the wrong brother. And Alucard's like, I don't even know what it is. It does something. And then Kell is like tugging on the ring, and it becomes two rings. But neither ring is smaller. It's not like it came apart into two halves. It's like it just became two rings. And Alucard's like, oh great, you broke it. Like, now you can pay for the ring out of your own little, you know, cash, because you broke that, I didn't break it, don't let Maris think I broke it. And Kell's like, I don't think it's broken, it's just weird. They meet up with Lila, and they're like, are you coming in to see Maris? And she's like, no, I want to go last. Like, you guys do your shit first, I'm gonna wait out here. Okay, so Alucard and Kell go in to meet with Maris to do their deals for their respective objects, and we learn what I think is one of the coolest things about Maris, which is that she doesn't do deals for money. Like, money is useless to her. She has this incredible black sphere. Imagine like a globe, but done all in like matte black. And it has some indents on it. And this is what she uses. And it turns out what Maris trades in is life. Years of life. Years of your life for her. And so Alucard presents her the mirror, and she's like, 5. And Alucard's like, 3? And they settle on 4. And Kell's like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about, until he finds out that we're talking about years of life. And Alucard puts his hands on this black orb, and it takes life from him. This is important because we actually don't know how old Maris is. Maris might be like 300 years old. That's kind of like what I'm getting at here. I should know, I guess. I know, but you don't know. But like, Maris is a lot older than she seems. Anyway, it comes to Kell's turn, and Kell's like, I can't give you my life. I'm an Antari magician, I'm like super rare, but also like my life is Rai's life, and they end up bartering, and he gives 2 years of his life for these rings, because Maris refers to them as Antari binding rings. We don't know what they do, she's not gonna tell us, but he wants them. And she kind of makes it very clear that he wants them. She's like, wow, Alucard, your eyes are really annoying because they just keep picking out the best shit on my ship. But she then wants to talk to Kell alone. She's like, Alucard, go on. Kell and I need to have a talk. Now remember, I gave you that little sidebar where I was like, when Kell was a child, he came through the floating market and the royal family took him from there. Maris is gonna make a call back to that. I guess it's like a call forward, because like you have not seen that story if you're reading this book for the first time. So Maris talks to Kell and is like, we've met before. You just don't remember. And Kell remembers. Kell has a little mark on the inside of his elbow that's the mark of a forgetting spell. And he knew that he forgot his life before, so he knows that this must be a part of his childhood. And Maris gives him a piece of paper that has the information about his life before he came to be a member of the royal family. And it's folded, of course, so it's not obvious. He's gonna have to open the paper if he wants to read it. But as he's leaving, he's like, how much does this cost? And she's like, this is the only thing I will ever give you for free, because it feels like settling a debt. But as he's leaving, she says, you should know, though, that like the thing about forgetting magic is that it does wear off on its own unless you really don't want it to. So some part of you does not want to remember, and you should think about what that means. So, dun dun dun, we go to Lila. Lila meets with Maris, and Maris is like, you have been wandering my ship, but your hands are empty. And Lila's like, because you're wearing what I want. I want that inheritor, that thing right around your neck. And Maris is like, oh, this isn't for sale. And Lila's like, I was here for the spiel that you gave me when we entered this ship, and you said that it was all for sale for the right price. And Maris is like, well, you're quick. And Lila's like, yeah, I need that, though. So what do you want? And Maris is like, it's so interesting. No one ever asks me what I want. And this is where Maris is like, I don't do this gig because I need it. And Lila's like, why do you do it? And she's like, it's just my purpose. Let's say that. And so Lila's like, okay, fine. What do you want for that inheritor? And Maris, who's, sidebar, a very good person and wanting to like help and knows that London is falling because she knows everything. Like, Maris is like, I want something I don't have. And I have a lot of things here. She's like, I don't have your eye. She's like testing to see how, like, what Lila's gonna do. Like, I want your broken glass eye, the one that has been cracked by Oshka. She's like, I'll give you the inheritor if you give me your eye. And Lila gives it up gladly and immediately does not like that she did that. Like, is like, oh, I didn't realize how much I was gonna miss that. Like, it's such a defense mechanism for her having it, and now she has no glass eye. But she's coming to terms with that because she got the inheritor, and Maris is like, don't worry, you can like wear a patch or whatever. She's like, or I do have something you could wear. And she pulls out a black glass eye. Like, dun dun dun, a black glass eye, which means Lila will look at herself in the mirror and for the first time see herself as she was meant to be. And she puts it in, and it does feel right, and it does look right. And she's like, how much for this? And Maris says, I will do it for a favor, but I don't want to call the favor in now. And why I'm beaming and why this is so important is that is the entire reason that the Fragile Threads of Power exists. Everyone read this series because I'm going to tell you that favor is not getting called in. And the moment that I wrote this scene, I was like, I don't want to call in the favor in this book. I want to call in the favor at the very beginning of the Fragile Threads of Power and have the entire book be about that favor. So this is the favor. Maris does the deal for the black glass eye in exchange for a favor. It's gonna come back. It's the whole point of Fragile Threads of Power. I'm like, yes, I'm so glad that we got here. Okay, meanwhile, Lila's like, thanks for the eye and the inheritor, goodbye. We cut back to Kell, and Kell lets go of the piece of paper that Maris gave him without opening it. He decides that he is Kell Maresh. He is who he's been for the last however many years. I guess like I should do math. He is who he's been for the last 18 years. And that's important to him. And that's who he wants to be. And he's had these like moments with Maxim, the king, and Amira, the queen, and Rai, his brother, that have made it very clear to him that that's his family. However, he came to be there. So he lets go of the paper. And readers everywhere go, no, I wanted to know that information. It's too bad. And then Lila joins them. And Lila's like, hey, I got this eye. And Kell's like, holy shit, your eye. And she's like, yeah, I know. And then she tosses the inheritor to Alucard, and she's like, let's get out of here. And back on the ship, everyone gathers around because they're trying to figure out what the ring does that Kell did his deal for. Like, this is a silver ring, and they pull it apart and it becomes two. They put it back together and it becomes one. They pull it apart again, it becomes two. They pull it apart and it becomes three. And what they discover is that these Antari binding rings allow the three Antari magicians to share their power. Holland, Lila, Kell. It breaks into three rings, and however many Antari put the rings on, it multiplies their power. And Lila is like, holy shit, this is how we're gonna defeat Oseron. Oh my god. I wish the part stopped there. Why is there another goddamn chapter? Okay, this is the perfect place for that part to stop. It would have been such a dun-dun-dun, but it's not a dun-dun-dun. Okay. Notice I was like really sad and down in the last video because I was like, and then they die, and then they die. But like, this is a great section. This is like, we're getting to the actions. Okay. We return to Red London off of that like victory chant of like, we will prevail. And we return to Red London, and Rye is riding back to the palace, and he lingers on the palace steps, and he turns and surveys the damage to the kingdom, and a woman starts to come up the steps, and she has a message for Rye from Oseron. She is very clearly possessed, and she basically says, he sees you now, hollow prince, broken toy soldier, and he will cut your threats. And like, we're like, uh-oh, Oseron has like turned his little eye of Sauron on Rye, and what happens is behind that woman is like an attack. Like all of these possessed, like people who have taken in Oseron into their minds and into their bodies, like are approaching, led by Barris Emery, Alucard's older brother, and they begin throwing themselves against the palace wards. Like, and it's like, what is it? Unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Like it is, but it's not going to hold forever. Rye retreats into the palace, and people are just like banging against the palace with their magic, and it is like cracking. It is already cracking. Rye rushes inside and finds the king and Tyrion making furious preparations, and learns that they're ready to put the sleeping spell on the city, but it's going to require an anchor. It's going to require a person to hold the spell up, and that person is going to be Tyrion, the head priest. And essentially, Tyrion says goodbye to Rye, not knowing if they'll ever see each other again. And the palace is starting to shake, and the wards are cracking, and Tyrion steps into the spell, and they begin to put the spell on, and it's like a question of which one's gonna break first. And finally, everything goes silent. All of the fight goes out of everybody outside who was throwing themselves against the palace walls as they all collapse because the sleeping spell has fallen over the city just in time. All right, and in the last chapter of this part, we cut back to the ship where Kell and Lila have been brainstorming how they're gonna use the ring to defeat Oseron, and Holland's like, give it to me. And they're like, no. No offense, I know you have like saved her life and you've like tried to help, but like you're still Holland, and I don't know if we can trust you. And what we discover is that the original ring, you know, it breaks into multiple pieces, but the first part is the anchor. It's kind of the person, whoever's wearing the anchor, they can't take that ring off until the other two rings come off. So like whoever is in that position is kind of holding the spell together and binding it, but it means that they can't really sever themselves. It puts them in a slightly subordinate position. And Holland's like, I will be the anchor. And Holland's like, Lila's like, I still don't trust you. And Holland's like, you don't have to trust me, but like it's going to take all three of us to do this, and I am willing to put myself in this position. Holland's like, I'm willing to be the anchor of this spell, and as long as we're connected, like, you'll have access to my power. And Lila's like, yeah, but you'll also have access to our power. And Holland's like, okay, but like one Antari magician was not enough to lure Oseron into taking our body. Like, we need him to step into one of us, and he's not gonna do it with like, unless all of us combine our magic. It's gonna be too enticing to him. We have to work together in this. You're going to have to trust me. And Lila's like, I don't want to do this, but in the interest of everything, the three of them agree that they're going to work together, and Lila Bard puts on the ring. And that is how we end part 10. Not to be very ominous that part 11 is called Death at Sea, but that is for next week. Next week is the end of the read-along. We are going to finish Conjuring of Light. There's so much still to come. I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. What a ride. Yeah, we gotta get to the end.